First up this morning, we are talking with the first responders in times of crisis. Some types of trauma are obvious, such as natural disasters, abuse maybe, addiction. Other forms that are not as obvious, things like homelessness and poverty. Today we are talking about those everyday types of trauma and the people who go out into the streets to help.
That's right. John Hyatt is the president and CEO of Impact and Impact 211's Crisis Call Center, and Marrika Rodgers is a counselor who operates a mobile screening unit that helps people who are poor and without a place to live. Thanks for being here, both of you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks, guys.
So important. I think it'll shock people what Molly said, that homelessness can cause trauma. John, how do you describe that? What is it about that situation that leads to a form of trauma?
Sure. Well, remember that trauma is a deeply disturbing or distressing event or experience. And so if you think about homeless, I said to you, when you leave work today, you don't have a place to go to. You don't have a credit card, your family and friends aren't an option. The kind of emotion, the kind of trauma that would create. And so there are people that are living that life, and so it's the trauma that is associated with that can be the same kind of trauma that people experience from a car accident, from a major injury or illness, acts of violence, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because everybody has a story, and I feel like, you know, when people who aren't homeless see people on the streets who don't have a place to live, you always kind of wonder, what's their story? What's the reason they don't have a place to live, or relatives or friends that they can count on? In terms of this mobile screening that you do, how does that work? Because that's actually taking what you do out into the streets and meeting people where they're at, right?
Yes, it is. So it can be an individual who is in need of services. So I may get a call, or one of my colleagues may get a call, and then we go to wherever the client is. So that could be a shelter, that could be their home, that could be like a local Starbucks, wherever that they're at, wherever that they feel comfortable with us meeting them at. And then I assess them to see if there's any diagnosable mental health illness, and then after that we are able to provide additional services for them.
And that immediate response is what's critical, right? It's meeting them immediately, finding them help in that moment. How often are you finding that it's mental illness that leads to people being on the street versus a choice or a bad circumstance?
Majority of the time that I meet with individuals, being homeless and trauma, those two correlate oftentimes. And then a lot of times I also find that there are the mental health illnesses attached to it as well.
Yeah. A lot of veterans too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How is it that you become aware of someone? So are usually these calls come into the crisis call center?
Yes. Yes. So they can come through 211, or even from like a case manager from a local nonprofit organization. I may get a call from a case manager and they say, hey, can you please go meet with this individual? They look like, it seems as if they need additional services, and then, you know, we move forward from there.
John, there's a lot of children also who are on the street. What kind of long-term effects does this have on children?
Well, we know there are long-term effects, right? So a reduced ability to deal with stress, to deal with other life issues, and so people young kids often end up with other mental health illnesses, substance abuse, those kinds of things.
You mentioned shelters, and I know that's one of the areas where you work with people. There's a big difference between providing temporary housing that someone might have or benefit from at a shelter like the one that we're looking at St. Ben's versus something permanent. So how is it that you can help people make that transition to permanent housing?
So we have a continuum of care, so that's a group of nonprofit organizations all working together. And so through that we have coordinated entry, and our model is housing first. And so no matter what an individual is going through, we believe that as long as they are housed, we're able to provide those additional wraparound services to best service them. And so a call would come through 211, and then the coordinated entry team would go out. I would go out and provide the mental health assessment, and then with that mental health assessment comes a case manager for permanent supportive housing. And then once the individual is housed, then we're able to wrap them around with those additional services, so employment or what have you.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering what the additional services are. So finding them a job and a way to sustain the housing, I'm sure, is priority number one. But there are probably other services too to help people stay in their home once you find something that's permanent.
Most definitely. So individuals who have the mental health diagnosis, they may need that ongoing counseling services. So then it may be like a referral out, or any additional needs that they may deem that they would like.
Are you yourself doing some of the counseling too? Because I know you have a master's in counseling.
Yes, I do have a master's in counseling, but I'm just the mental health counselor for the medical assessments.
Gotcha.
So
that's
What
an
are
important role. That's the first. That's that first contact.
Yeah. What are some of the questions that you might ask someone to make the assessment?
So kind of like what you all just started out with, what is that individual story? What happened in order for the individual to get where they are at? And then I kind of just go through, you know, what was your upbringing? Were you raised by both your parents? Did you graduate high school? What were some of the traumatic things that may have led up to the point that you're at now?
Gotcha. How many homeless shelters does Milwaukee have?
6.
6 shelters. Okay, and so when you're talking about 6 shelters, how many people in Milwaukee are currently homeless? You know that?
There are about 785 shelter beds,
Okay.
and they're all full, and there are about another 100 people that are homeless and looking to get into a temporary shelter.
Well, and I think that's what a lot of people wonder, because I think there's so many stigmas about homelessness and why they're there, or do they want to transition into a permanent housing. And so a lot of the people who don't have a place to sleep want a place to sleep, right? They're not happy on the streets.
Right.
They're not trying, you know, that is exactly the opposite of the intention. So how do we then move forward with getting more places or more, I guess, into permanent housing? It's probably that transition that's so important.
Yeah, it's a sort of a political will issue. I mean, you have to have more affordable housing. There has to be some way to subsidize it. There has to be a way to, and so it comes down to sort of dollars and cents, and somehow we know what the formula is. I mean, we've got the system now, and we need that affordable housing to get people into.
It's a matter of space too, sometimes where people can actually go. You have a wonderful event coming up. It's this is happening on Wednesday, August 8th from 5:30 to 7:30. It's called Higher Ground, the Trauma Epidemic. There's still tickets available. It's at the Wisconsin Club. You can call this phone number to find out more. It's 414-302-6624. You can also go to impactinc.org to find out more. And we've been talking a lot about Impact 211 in your crisis call center. You can call free services, and that's what the event helps support, is all the free services that Impact offers. You can call their crisis call center at 211 to get help for yourself or a loved one. And this series, this part of our series, was sponsored by the Bader Philanthropies, which was fantastic that they're supporting your efforts too, and that you work with so many different organizations to help people find permanent housing and a way to sustain a new life.
And you'll be emceeing the event.
Yeah, and
so
I'll
people
be
come,
there.
they can see Molly too.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks you guys so much.
Thanks
so much.
Appreciate it.